Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your Audio Amigo, here today with another normal Audio Amigo review. Today we're looking at the brand spanking new Simgot EW300. This is the HBB edition. It was released at the beginning of August 2024 at a price of $76. There's also a standard version priced at $70 and the DSP edition priced at $80. I'll go into more details about the different versions later, but for now, just know that I personally think Simgot kind of flubbed the launch for this set. And no, I'm not just salty because this is the first Simgot IEM without an official code name. Come on, guys, you had such a good thing going. You had the Dream, the Shark, the Phoenix, the LM, the Supermix, the Maze, the Fermat. What am I supposed to call this one? The Heart X, the XO? I hate it. Come on, guys, consistency. We'll go ahead and get started as usual with what's inside the box. It's pretty typical unboxing for a Simgot. All of their stuff is pretty similar at this price range. But inside you get the IEMs themselves. You get a little carrying case. The case is maybe a little bit on the larger side, but I think it's pretty nice. I think it's the same one that comes with the EA500LM and the EM6L. It should slide nicely into a pocket or purse without too much trouble. But inside the case you get the cable, which again looks almost exactly like the one on the 500LM or on the EM6L. You also get a pair of tuning nozzles. Mine came with a piece of metal, more on that later. You also get a set of tuning foams to put in the nozzles in case you want to tame the treble down a little bit. And you also get a set of silicone rings, washers to separate the nozzles in case you do change the tuning up. In another separate box, you get your ear tips. You only get 3 sizes. They're nice soft silicone tips, nothing wrong with these, but I would have liked to have seen a couple more tip options, maybe some foams or narrower bore, wider bore. But yeah, that's really my only complaint. That I wish this was a modular cable, but I mean, they essentially give you what is a mini customizable tuning kit. So overall, I think it's a really good accessories package here. But we'll move on to the cable. So as I mentioned, I believe this is the exact same cable that comes on the 500LM. It's a 2-wire braid with the inside conductors having this nice two-tone red, gold, and black color. I like this cable overall. I feel like I would have preferred to have a red and black motif, especially with the HBB edition, to make it match the matte black shells a little bit better. But yeah, that would have added cost. There's a Simgot branding on the 3.5mm jack. There's a metal Y-split here with no branding on that. The chin slider is functional, but during my testing, there were a couple of instances where I was walking along and it sort of slid down out of the way. Not a huge deal, pretty functional chin slider with only a couple of failures here. Speaking of issues, so my cable, let me show you here. You can see it has the red dot indicating this is the right IEM, but that's the left IEM. It says L on the cable and it says L on the IEM. This is the right one, and it also has a red dot on it. So I don't know if the factory messed that up or what is going on, but all of my other Simgot cables that are of this style have red and blue dots. So a bit of a manufacturing defect. I'm honestly not used to seeing manufacturing defects from Simgot. They're usually pretty good. But other than that small issue and the chin slider being not the best, yeah, it's a good cable. It's not microphonic. It behaves well. It lays flat. It's not amazing, but I don't want to rush out and immediately replace it. So yeah, it's a pass. So let's talk about build quality. These are CNC machined aluminum shells. The standard edition have a sort of stainless steel silver look to them, while the HBB and DSP versions are this nice matte black color. You get 2 vent holes. You get one right above the driver stack, and you get another one over here closer to the recessed 2-pin connector. The nozzles, as I mentioned, are removable. There isn't any foam inside either set of nozzles from the factory. The tuning differences are accomplished via the different densities of mesh on the tips. If you take a flashlight and you set the nozzles, the gold ones and the silver ones on top, you'll see that the amount of light that they let through is different for each one. There's slightly different textures of mesh. But speaking of the nozzles, here's where I'm going to bring up the second manufacturing defect that I encountered with this set. You saw the piece of metal that I mentioned earlier. So I'll bring up some pictures. But when I was unboxing this to use for measurements and I was swapping the nozzles, I noticed that inside one of my silver nozzles was a piece of metal. Okay, it wouldn't fall out with gravity, so I had to go grab some tweezers to pull it out. And as I did, it looks like it's an aluminum alloy chip that's part of the manufacturing process for either the nozzles or the shells. Why it wasn't washed away or cleaned away at the factory isn't clear to me. But what is clear is that it didn't damage the drivers or the nozzles in any way. I measured with the silver nozzles because they're the ones that come stock, and I remeasured, and they measured fine. There's no channel imbalance. There's nothing going on there. So, yeah, not a huge issue overall. Glad I caught it before it did make its way into the drivers and damage something potentially, but it was a little bit shocking to me. I would keep a close eye on these in the future in case there are some other hidden manufacturing defects that we don't know about. I have 6 other Simgot sets in my collection, and none of them have had any factory defects whatsoever, be it the cable or the shells. I'm not going to discourage you from buying this set because Simgot has a track record for decent build quality. But maybe for this one, maybe just treat it a little bit gentler than normal, just in case. I know I'm certainly going to be taking it easier than usual. That being said, let's go ahead and pull up the specs. So these are a tribrid, which is really good at this price range. I believe from what I've seen, the 3 drivers here are arranged in a sort of sandwich. You have the 10mm dynamic driver with a composite ceramic diaphragm as the meat of the sandwich. The bottom bun is a 6mm annular planar driver, and the top bun is the ceramic piezoelectric driver. I think the 6mm planar, like I said, the bottom bun is closest to the ear, and the PZT is furthest away. For these being full metal shells, they're pleasantly lightweight. The nozzles aren't gargantuan either. They're a pretty nice size. Something that I appreciate is even though this is a tribrid, these are really easy to drive and they don't require an external amp. Simgot in general doesn't seem to want to make you spend money on a dongle DAC, and I appreciate that. All of the IEMs that I have from them are extremely easy to drive. I like that. But now it's time for the cool wall. So, I really like these. They look freaking awesome. The matte black is really nice. The sort of heart/X attracts fingerprints like crazy, but it's pretty easy to just wipe down with a shirt or something. They look super slick. I really wish they came with an all-black cable or a two-tone cable with maybe some red accents. Or if you colored the heart and the X in with red, I think that'd be even cooler looking. But overall, I'm going to stick these in cool. If they had come with a red cable or some red accents on there to give it that two-tone look, I think I would have put it in Sub-Zero. But these are really good looking as far as I'm concerned. I and some of y'all have some high hopes for this set with the ladies, so let's see if they like this or not. Well, I guess that goes to show how much fashion sense I have. It's about as split a verdict as you can possibly get. 2 no's, 2 yeses, and a meh as to whether or not these actually are pretty. Only one of our ladies thinks these deserve a compliment as well, so yeah, don't expect too much if you're going to wear these out and about. As far as comments go, we've got some positive and some negative. It looks like someone agrees with me about the whole color thing. I think a splash of red would have looked really nice. But overall, very mixed feelings on these. I'm a little disappointed. I thought Simgot had a winner here. I think these look really good, but just goes to show how much I know about fashion. Next to nothing. But we'll move on to comfort. The fit on these is actually really nice. They're light. They fit into my ears well. There's no sharp corners or edges to the metal. They're nice and smooth all around. I wore these for long gaming sessions, went on some long walks, had no issues with them. These for me are easily an all-day comfort IEM. Most of the Simgots that are sort of shaped this way, the EW200, are the same. As far as my wife goes, these passed the tiny ears test just perfectly. Overall shape wasn't too large for her teensy-weensy ears. The nozzle length and width were the right size for her tips, and she was able to wear these for a full workday with no discomfort. The angular shells fit the contours of her ear well. She had 0 issues with comfort for these, so if you're a smaller eared person, these will probably be pretty good for you. Good job, Simgot, with the design. But now it's time for what everyone's been waiting for. How do these sound? I'm going to do my best to talk about the differences between the silver and the gold nozzles here. So just bear with me if this is a little longer than usual. We'll go ahead and get started with the bass response. There is some really good sub-bass extension here and a very fun mid-bass boost on this set. Pendulum's Slam sounds like it was made to test bass performance, hence the name. This set plays it back very well. I feel like both nozzles give a boosted, energetic bass presentation that makes drum and bass sound fun and exciting. The gold nozzle has overall more bass quantity than the silver nozzle, but the quality and sort of speed and tactility of the bass is nearly identical for both of these. That said, I think the bass on this set can be a little bit soft, even with the gold nozzle. I felt that some lower notes and bass drops were lacking a bit of that rumbly, slow decay that I tend to prefer. But outside of that small nitpick, the bass here is a ton of fun. Bass guitars and kick drums are forward with both of these nozzles. The rich, buzzy bass line in Kenshi Yonezu's Kickback is easy to make out on this set, with the buzzing being particularly nice on the gold nozzles compared to the silver. Both of these tunings are quite bassy, but the gold nozzles are definitely the more fun of the two. Neither of these is for someone who would prefer a more laid-back bass presentation. Like, even the silver nozzles have some nice slam and knock to them. Overall, great bass here. So, mid-range. You definitely feel that bass boost here. I don't know for a fact, because I don't know how the crossovers are configured here, but if this is set up anything like the Moondrop May, which also has an annular planar driver in it, then the annular planar and the PZT aren't active down in the mid-range. As a result, the DD is essentially on its own, so the mids are, for me, a little bit warmed up, like you would expect with this much sub-bass boost. It isn't as prominent on the silver nozzle as on the gold, but with the gold nozzle, you'll get a bit of that added warmth and huskiness to vocals overall. Mark Ronson's Uptown Funk with Bruno Mars, I think it sounds a bit more natural on the silver nozzles, but the gold nozzles add a bit of a nuance to the backing vocals that I think put a bit more of a focus on Bruno's vocals. Another big difference between these two is the female vocals. The silver nozzle has female vocals much more forward and giving them more of an emphasis compared to the more relaxed vocal presentation of the gold nozzle. Hololive Idol Project's Suspect is a fantastic example of this. In the silver nozzles, the vocals really pop, especially Aki Rosenthal's voice sounds really centered and really forward with these. On the gold nozzles, the vocals aren't bad, they just aren't as prominent as they are on the silver version. Both nozzles for this set suffer from a bit of a recession in terms of overall instrumentation in the mid-range. I could still separate instruments out in these songs, and the overall detail is good, but you can sort of tell that the mid-range isn't the focus of this set, and I think it shows. Moving to the upper mids and treble. Your experience here is going to depend entirely on which nozzle you choose. The silver nozzle is a slightly toned down version of the Simgot upper end house sound, while the gold nozzles are a more relaxed treble presentation. Think something like the Kefine Delci. So this showed up to me really easily listening to the hi-hats in the first verse of Ram Jam's Black Betty. Both sets have good upper harmonics and they decay naturally, but the amount of energy you get with those hi-hat hits is the difference maker here. Some of those stick strikes can get pretty intense and metallic sounding. The silver nozzles make those hi-hats come across as sharper, more forward, more exciting, more energetic. The gold nozzles, while the upper harmonics are still excellent and still resolving and natural sounding, is a less intense experience, and it's more relaxing to listen to compared to the silver nozzles. I personally don't find the classic Simgot high-end presentation to be too fatiguing, but I can see how some treble-sensitive folks might still find the silver nozzles to be a bit too much. That was cymbals. Female vocal harmonics are also well done. The silver nozzle can get a tiny bit nasally with some vocals. I noticed in Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, some of the vocals can take on just a slight nasalness to them. It doesn't ruin the presentation. It's, again, a nitpick. One thing, however, that does affect both nozzles is a bit of a off tonality that some people won't like. Remember, this is the frequency range where the PZT and the annular planar are doing their thing. And for some people, they'll add a little bit of extra sizzle and sparkle that will be more pleasant tonally in the treble. Other people really don't like that. They'll hear them and say, oh, they sound metallic, they sound unnatural. I do hear a bit of a difference in the timbre for this set compared to, say, a balanced armature or a smaller DD doing the treble, but to me it doesn't sound off or bad. I'm not really a fan of PZTs in general, but The Super Mix 4, I thought, did it fantastically. Whatever crossover Simgot is using in both this and the Super Mix 4, I think tames that screechy PZT sound that I typically don't like. I personally don't mind it at all here. It doesn't bother me in Super Mix, doesn't bother me here. I think Simgot wanted to make sure that you could hear the extra two drivers in the tuning here. You can sense them in the playback for sure, while still having a good sense of coherency that all the drivers are working together. The treble here overall is either sparkly, exciting, energetic with the silver nozzles, or laid back and chill, depending on what nozzle you choose. Some folks are going to love the sound of those two extra drivers, and others won't. It's really up to you. As far as technicalities go, to my ears, this is a very well-resolving set. You've got enough low-end energy to make out the dynamics of the bass in Charlie Parker's I've Got You Under My Skin, even though Charles Mingus sounds like he's at the complete back of the recording room, so you should barely hear him, but you can pick him up just fine. On the other end of the spectrum, I really wanted to hear Chris Steele's mandolin work in Independence Day on these, specifically to listen to the planar and PZT work the upper harmonics of those strings with the buzzing and the ringing and the finger slides, and it sounded really good. This is a very well-resolving set. Maybe not the absolute most detailed sound at this price range, but it's definitely in the discussion. For stereo separation, this time I went with Buena Vista Social Club's Chan Chan. All the members and their voices are placed really neatly in the mix. You've got the armonico player in the right and a slide guitar on the left, with plenty of separation for all the instruments in the middle to slide in between without feeling claustrophobic. Really good stereo separation here. The perceived 3D soundstage on this set is also pretty good. The silver nozzle in particular, I feel, adds a little bit of extra something to well-mastered tracks. But let's do a new one for here. I thought that Tiene Espinas el Rosal by Grupo Cañaveral had some really great spatial percussion effect to it. You've got different drums and cymbals and percussion things going on. It sounds like it's coming from all around you. Overall, I think the stereo separation on this set is great, and the soundstage is a bit above average for this price range. Okay, so before we get into the comparisons, I would like to take a second to talk about the launch of this IEM and how I personally feel that Simgot and Linsol could have made this launch a lot less of a headache for consumers. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there are three versions of this IEM. There's the standard, the HBB, and the DSP. On Linsol's website, if you go and you look, the description for the HBB version, I'll put up a picture, says that this version features a sleek matte black shell while maintaining the precise tuning of the standard EW300. Fair enough. However, if you buy the HBB and the standard version and you look at the back of the boxes, the frequency response graphs that Simgot provides on the back of the boxes show differences in the tuning. Thank you, Paul Wasabi, for the image here. The DSP version also has no wording regarding the tuning on the site. They don't mention the tuning at all. And yet again, if you look at the back of the box, it's a different graph from the HBB and the standard version. What confounds this problem are the graphs that early reviewers generated on 7-Eleven clone couplers, myself included. The early reviews were a mix of some people saying, oh, well, all three versions essentially sound the same, and other people saying, oh, no, all three are different. Be careful which one you get. It made it kind of impossible when the launch day actually came to know which version you wanted and which tuning you were going to get. It was very confusing, and it was a headache for a lot of people online, myself included. What I personally believe, after having looked at the back of the boxes and studied a ton of different people's graphs, is that there's essentially two physical versions of this IEM with two separate tunings. You have the matte black version, which is the HBB and the DSP version, and you have the silver version, which is the standard. There is also a third tuning that is unlocked by the DSP cable. So the EW300 standard, at least according to all the graphs I've seen, and again, I have no experience with this, should have a touch less bass and treble energy when compared to the HBB version. And the DSP version has even less bass than those two, and a much smoother sort of looking treble graph. Again, haven't heard it, so I can't tell you. However, if you plug a standard 3.5 millimeter aftermarket cable into the DSP version of the EW300, you get exactly the sound profile of the HBB. So, This was a huge mess. All it would have taken, it was so simple, is to have Simgot put some lines in the description about how the different tunings on the separate versions behave, maybe put up some graphs, the same pictures they have on the back of the box, put them on the website so that people can see at least have some idea of what the differences in the tuning are. They already do this with these swappable nozzles on the EA500LM. You go to the EA500LM's webpage, it tells you what the different nozzles sound like with graphs. All those IEMs that have tuning switches and IEMs that have separate bass versions, they all make the differences clear on the different product pages. You can't go to Simgot's official website for help either. According to their site, the EA500LM, the SuperMix 4, the EM10, and the EW300 don't even exist. Simgot, if by some chance you're watching this video, please update your website and put in some graphics or words that detail the differences in the tuning between these three versions. You have a lot of very confused customers right now who are getting mixed messages from lots of different people. And go ahead and pass that information along to Linsol so they can put it on their product page, please. That's enough of me being angry about the launch. Let's do the comparisons. So, because there's two separate tunings, I'm going to do two separate sets of comparisons. And I'm going to try to be as quick as I can. So let's go ahead and start with the gold nozzle tuning. The gold nozzle tuning is a warm V-shaped tuning. And to go ahead and get us started, I've brought out the Delci from my last video. And what I said then holds true here. The Delci is a little less V-shaped, and to my ears doesn't compete with the EW300 in terms of pure sound quality. But if it's on sale for $50, it's a very compelling option with a better cable and a better accessories package. Moving on, we've got the Tangzu X Divinus Fudu. This is a single DD plus 2BA hybrid, and to my ears, it's very close to the EW300. It's got less treble energy, and it's more relaxed, and it has to my ears at least, a very similar amount of detail to the EW300, but without that slight metallic tinge of the piezo driver here. It also comes in the box with Sankai and Divinus premium ear tips as standard. The MSRP of $90, if you're paying $90, I don't recommend it over the EW300. But lately, it's been on sale for between $60 and $75, and at that price range, I think it's quite competitive with the gold nozzle, especially if you want something that little bit warmer. Finally, I have my wife's Letshuoer SO8. Shout out to her for letting me borrow it again for this review. The SO8 is $20 to $30 more than the EW300, depending on which version you get. But I feel like it is a significant step up in overall sound quality. You get less bass quantity than the EW300, but the bass quality on the SO8 is just so much cleaner. It's more dynamic. The treble presentation on here I feel is also cleaner, but the biggest difference is the mid-range, which I feel is much fuller, much more musical, which with better detail on here. Add in the fact that it comes with a modular, better cable with more ear tips, nicer accessories. I feel like the SO8 is 100% worth the price premium. In general, I feel like the gold nozzle tuning of the EW300 stands out among the warm sets in this price bracket, mostly because it's a bit more V-shaped with more treble energy than its competition. Alright, now that we've made the switch of the boxes using Movie Magic, let's talk about the tuning on the silver nozzle. So, the silver nozzle is essentially the V-shaped Simgot house sound, but with a bit more mid-bass for some warmth and a slightly subdued top end, again for some warmth. We'll start by talking about its little brother, the Simgot EW200, priced at $40. As I just said, compared to the 300, 300 has more bass, slightly less treble energy. It's also got a bit more of that resolving detail power thanks to those two extra drivers compared to the 200. It does add a bit of that metallic timbre that some people won't like, but it's up to you to decide if it's essentially worth paying almost double what the Maze costs for the silver nozzle tuning of the 300. Next up is what I think is honestly the most interesting one. This is the Moondrop May. It is $65. It comes with a USB C DSP cable, but if you plug it in using a normal 3.5mm cable, the tuning on these two is extremely, extremely similar. The May has a bit more of a vocal focus and less overall bass energy compared to the 300, but outside of that, they're extremely similar in terms of overall tuning. In terms of detail and resolving power, they're also extremely similar. The May also has an annular planar in the treble to boost the clarity up there, but it doesn't have the PZT. The EW300 has maybe a bit of extra shine in the air. I don't really notice it. It's very faint, but you do have that metallic edge on the EW300, whereas you don't have that on the May. That being said, if your source doesn't have a USB C port, then you're kind of out of luck. You're going to have to shell out for an aftermarket cable to use it with basically anything else. And if you want to change the tuning on the May, you're forced to use the DSP cable and the Moondrop app. The tuning changes on the 300 are analog. They'll work with any source, with any cable. You can swap the nozzles and the foam yourself, and it'll work with anything, even an old Walkman. So yeah, this is an interesting comparison, I feel like. Next up, we've got the EA500 LM. Okay. The LM is more resolving and detailed than the 300. It also doesn't have that slight metallic timbre that y'all are probably tired of hearing about. That said, even the gold nozzle, which is the less bright and less trebly version of the LM's tuning, okay, even the gold nozzle people find to be too bright and too fatiguing. For people who think that, I think that the 300 with the silver nozzles is the way to go. It makes the sound signature of this more accessible to people who are more sensitive to treble. And lastly, I'm going to bring in the EM6L, the Phoenix. Come on, look nice. There we go. EM6L Phoenix. So the Phoenix, I'll put it over here, does not have the same sub-bass energy that the 300 has. It does, however, have a more filled-in mid-range compared to any of the three Simgots here, okay? And it also has better overall detail and resolution compared to, in my opinion, everything else here, okay? The EM6L overall, to me, sounds like an upgraded version of the silver nozzle tuning on the 300. It just sounds like the Letshuoer SO8. I think that this is just a step up in overall sound quality compared to the 300. Everything here summed up, I think that the EW300 has the perfect name, okay? It's an upgrade over the 200 while not stepping on the toes of the 300. And in terms of the tuning within the Simgot family, it's pretty unique. The only other thing with this sort of tuning is the EM6L, and the EM6L I and some others consider to be sort of the black sheep of the Simgot family. The May is an extremely interesting competitor here. I can see people choosing the May for its DSP capabilities, especially if you're daily driving a phone as your audio player, but the EW300 trades blows with it very evenly, and the versatility to the EW300's tuning doesn't require a special cable with a kind of janky app. Alright, so I cleaned up the table, I left the two boxes for what I think are the two closest competitors for the two separate tunings, and now it's the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time to place the EW300 on my Audio Amigo Arbitrary rating list. I really like this set. I think it's a fantastic value. It had two whole comparison sections and took me twice as long to test because it's essentially a 2-in-1 IEM. With the gold nozzles, it's a warmer, V-shaped, crowd-pleasing tuning that isn't straight up warm like some of its competitors. It has that little bit of extra sparkle that some people will enjoy. And with the silver nozzles in place, it is essentially what I would describe as a baby EM6L. The cheapest version of this set is $70, and at that price, it's extremely competitive. The only issues I have with it are the slight metallic timbre and the muddled marketing that led to an extremely confusing and not very consumer-friendly launch. The metallic timbre honestly doesn't bother me all that much personally. I mention it because I know that there are lots of folks out there who are sensitive to planar or balanced armature or PZT tonality. I, again, like the way the PZT is implemented here. I do hear the metallic tonality, but it doesn't bother me, honestly, all that much. Uh, I don't feel like the EW300 necessarily punches above its weight. I think the LM is still clearly better, and I think the Fudu for the worm tuning is better. But I don't think there's anything in this price range that does this two-in-one sound the way that this does it. Uh, so for that, which is its versatility, for the crowd-pleasing tuning with both nozzles, honestly, for the fact that it's the first Simgot set that I can actually recommend to people who are treble sensitive, and for the decent accessories package, this earns a spot in the This Is Brilliant tier. This is a winner. I like it a lot. It looks great, it sounds great, and it's at a really good price. It doesn't quite make it into the you should buy this tier, but it was close. Like I said, I think the piezo driver is well executed, but there are folks out there who are going to really dislike that tonality, so it can't be an unconditional recommendation. I was also, I was really surprised in a bad way by the manufacturing defects that I found on my set. It was completely out of left field. Not something I expected from Simgot, and honestly, the lack of information at launch about the different versions just made me sour a bit on it. But all of that negativity, I still really like this set. It kept it out of the top tier, but it's still absolutely excellent. I'm going to recommend these. But to who? I don't think this is a set for complete beginners to the hobby. The sheer confusion of the different versions and being handed a tuning kit, I think, is going to be too much for new users. They're going to be, overwhelmed. I think this set is more for people who are already in the hobby and are maybe looking to try their first ever Simgot set, especially for those who are treble sensitive. If you're treble sensitive, this is the first Simgot set that I think you can actually try to experience without hurting your ears. I also think this set is great for people who maybe want to dip their toes into the world of modding and tweaking the sound. They've included tuning foams and nozzles with other releases, but if you pick up the DSP version of the EW300 and you have a regular, 3.5mm cable, you essentially have 4 stock tunings, and you can still play around with the included foams. I also really hope Simgot eventually releases a companion app that lets you tweak the DSP on the DSP version, because that would add a whole nother dimension of versatility to that set. In fact, the fact that Simgot doesn't already have an app to tweak the DSP on the DSP version is the main reason I grabbed the HBB version instead of the DSP version. That being said, if they do release a DSP app, I'll probably pick up the DSP version just to play around with it. So overall, I can only speak to and recommend the HBB version because I have no experience with the other 2 versions. I think that it's an excellent choice for treble-sensitive folks looking to finally try a Simgot set. It's also a compelling upgrade path for people looking to move up from those $20, $30 budget sets. The fact that you have access to 2 tunings and ways to modify them, I think, is an amazing value at $76. I think if you're looking for an IEM in this price range, you should be strongly considering the Simgot EW300, unless you're, a complete beginner and the thought of the swappable nozzles and the foams is a bit much for you. But that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for all your patience. It takes me longer to review IEMs with different tunings like switches, nozzles, and so on, because I want to give each tuning full listen and full comparisons and give you my impressions on all the different tunings. I really like the EW300. I think it's a great step for Simgot. It's their first sort of consumer-friendly, mass market set, if you will. I hope we see some more sets tuned like this in the future, particularly the silver nozzle tuning. I think it's quite nice. In other news, I have a public ranking list now. You'll find it down in the description of this video with my music playlists and my frequency response database. You should be able to find every set that I've reviewed to date, as well as information to help you make purchasing decisions. But for now, that's going to do it. I appreciate your continued support. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews, and I will catch y'all next time. Bye!